Welcome back. We are ready to glaze our clay projects. So we've got them all done and they have been bisque fired, your clay projects, and they're all ready to go. And so this is the portion of how to glaze them. We're going to paint on glaze like this one here. This is some orange glaze. I have a multitude of colors over there. This year in 7th grade we're going to use more of the selection that I have of glazes, and there's a lot of selection over there. What you're going to be able to do is when you pick out a glaze color, you're going to look on the cabinet door and there are going to be these stars like this that have what the finished product looks like. Also on the jar, this is what it's going to look like when it's fired. As you can see, it's not exactly the color that's in here because when it's fired at the high temperatures that we fire it at, it'll end up being a much more vibrant, and it'll turn out glossy like this. It has flux in it, and so it will fire at a high temperature, turn out glossy and smooth like these, and a little bit different color than what it comes out of the jar. I know particularly the dark blue does not look like dark blue at all when it comes out of the jar. A couple other colors are very similar to that, but when they're fired, trust me, they're going to be the color that is pasted on the jar or put on the star on the cabinet. Now in one cabinet, the cabinet on the left, I have a lot of these Crystal Tex style glazes. They have some speckles in them, and when you mix up the jar and you open up the jar and mix it up a little bit, there are little granular sandy little rocks in there, and that's what those are. Those are going to break up and create these little speckles all over the project. I also on the right hand cabinet have all solid colors, and you'll be able to see what kinds of colors there are by the star here and how they turn out. All right, now when we go to working on our clay projects, there may be a case where you've got some rough edges and you'd like to smooth it out with some sandpaper. On the counter there, I have some small pieces of sandpaper, and you can smooth out any rough edges that you may have with the sandpaper. Clean that up, do anything. You can't take off huge, if you've got a big thing that sticks up or anything like that, you can't sand that down, but you definitely can smooth the surface with sandpaper. If you do decide to sand, I am going to recommend that you go over to the sink and rinse it off. That dust does interfere with the glaze sticking to the project. Sometimes there'll be areas that ends up not sticking very well, and you've got big, spots that aren't that don't have glazes on them. So all you have to do is just give it a quick rinse. They dry really fast, and you can, even if it's a little damp, this project, you can still add glazed to it. All right, now when you do decide you're going to pick out your glaze, I do want you to either stir or shake it well. I do recommend also that you hold on to the lid if you're going to shake it. I have had instances where the lid wasn't secure and their neighbor was wearing the glaze. So when we don't want that kind of mess, and we don't want to waste the glaze. Now when you are applying the glaze, you're going to open it up after you've mixed it up well, and you can dip right out of the jar. Now if there's only one jar of the color that you need and you're at a different table and somebody else wants some of the glaze, you can pour it into a cup and use it. But be sure to pour it back into the correct bottle of glaze. But otherwise you can just dip directly out of the jar, use it as much as you need, and then put the lid back on and put it back where you found it. Now whenever we're applying glaze also, I recommend that you apply at least 2 coats, in some cases 3. 2 coats is usually plenty. But if you want it a vibrant color, you're going to find that it's going to be more effective at least 2 coats. Do not put 9 coats on, or more than 3. What happens is it's too heavy of a coat, and it's going to, this is going to heat onto the surface, and if it's really too much glaze, it's just going to drip down and adhere itself to the kiln shelf, and then we've got a whole different problem that we don't want to deal with. Now when I have these stars over here, when I painted these, the colors of glazes, I gave them 1 coat, 2 coats, and 3 coats. So they will be a little darker at the bottom, and that'll kind of help you see how they look with more coats, but no more than 3. All right, now, and in this case, I will let you glaze the bottoms. They are flat bottoms, so if you want glaze on the bottom, you don't have to put glaze on the bottom, but if you do, you may. I have some stilts, I'll put them on when I fire them so they don't stick to the kiln shell. Now, when you are creating this and you want it to look like an actual pop can or the item that you made, you can go over to the pop cans and decide that you would like to draw that right on there, okay? And so with a pencil, you can draw right onto your project the design that you want. So let's say I want this to say Pepsi, and I can draw that out. Don't worry about the pencil staying on the clay project because it will burn off and will not be there when you are done, okay? So don't worry about that. And then if you do decide to draw something on there, maybe even if you just wanted the Pepsi symbol or something like it, draw it on there. And then apply the colors that you want. So I would put just red in this space. I would leave this white and put clear over that space, and then blue here. Okay, however you decide you want to do it. You decide it. So the important thing is with glaze, it's not like paint. You can't mix the blue and the red and get purple. What you're doing is this is a chemical compound that at a high heat turns these colors. So what you want red, you just paint red. And what you want white, you just paint white. And what you want blue, you paint blue. Don't paint this whole thing dark blue and then put red over it because it doesn't quite work that way. All right, so lastly, if you have pieces that have broken off of your clay project, let's say you've got a piece that came off of your project and it needs to be glued when we're all done. It is easier to glue this bisqueware the way it is than it is when it's glazed over. So wherever it's going to be glued back together, leave that unglazed. And so I'll put some Gorilla Glue on it when it's all done, and so that it's easier if there's no glaze on there to glue it back together. This clay is very porous and it takes the glue very well. Otherwise, if you have something that has come off that is flat, for example, this here came off. It was going to be adhered there. It didn't stay. It wasn't scored very well, so it didn't stay on there. You can put on a flat surface like this, you can put some glaze here. I will fire it just like this, and the whole thing is glazed. That little piece there is glazed. The glaze is going to act as a glue, and when I fire it flat like this, it will just fuse together. Okay, so that is the tips I have for glazing. At this point, when I turn off the video, if you have further questions, you may ask.